And hi everyone, welcome to another AI conversation, and I'm joined today by Prof. Carl Pilario of UP Diliman. We met actually in a recent talk that I was invited to give in the ITDC, the UP ITDC, and andun si Prof. Carl, no? He was one of the audience. So I'm very happy to have you on the show, Carl. Welcome aboard.
Hi, thank you po, Doc. Do we speak in English or
Okay lang?
any?
Tagalog, Taglish, pwede.
Yeah, I was glad to meet you. It was the first time that I met you, and I was really glad that you invited me in this very nice podcast of yours, and hope to be of help in your audience as well.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's top of my mind, si Prof. Carl is part of the AI program or the AI PhD program of UP, no? Which I believe is one of the first, if not the first, tama ba? In the Philippines?
Yeah, yeah, yung specific title na Master of Engineering in AI
Uh-huh.
and PhD in AI. Yes, nasa UP, of course.
It's housed in the engineering center, 'di ba? Of UP.
The College of Engineering at UP Diliman. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So maybe we can start with that, no? Were you part of the people who crafted the program, and you're currently teaching, as I understand, classical machine learning? So let's start
Yes.
with that, no? I think that's
Um,
classic
Ako
mga ano.
personally, I came from my PhD in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I did my PhD in Cranfield University at the UK.
Okay.
So I graduated 2020. And when I got back, I got contacted by a group of people from the College of Engineering. So there were um, faculty members from computer science, industrial engineering, triple E.
Hmm.
It's like they banded together, and then I got invited as well. And so we talked about how can we craft the AI program at the college. Also, it was motivated by our dean as well.
Yeah.
And then, so we tried to craft the curriculum first, right? We actually started with PhD in AI. How can we craft a PhD in AI
The
program?
PhD was done first before the Master of
Yes,
Eng. Okay.
yes. It got crafted first, but actually, what happened was UP wanted a master's program first.
Mm-hmm.
So then we crafted a master's program. It's the one that got instituted first,
The
and
Masters. Mm.
then the year after, yeah, we got a PhD in AI.
Tapos wait, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, there are several master's degrees in AI or isa lang in UP.
Master of Engineering in AI, and there's now also a master's in no, no, not master's in DS, but PhD in DS, data science.
Okay, okay. So it's not in
Yeah,
AI, PhD in data science.
data science. So
Um,
it's another program.
pero is it still in the engineering college or hindi? 'Di ba statistics
Half and
or
half.
somewhere else? Yeah.
We have part in the College of Engineering, but we are also joined by the College of Science
Okay,
and
CS.
School of
Okay.
Statistics. Right.
So it's a collaboration between three colleges
Yeah.
na malabas. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when we crafted the PhD in AI and the Master of Engineering in AI, we're the only ones from the College of Engineering who
Hmm.
crafted that curriculum.
Okay. So, how long has you said you're on your second, tama, or third cohort already?
We're about to graduate our first batch actually
Okay.
this semester. We're very excited. So now they're doing their own capstone projects now.
These are the PhDs, the first batch of PhDs
Not
and
yet the PhDs,
the
the
masters.
masters.
Okay. Well, that's great, no? So
That
how
is
has it
great.
been since you were there at the inception? What were the
Uh,
challenges? Were there any challenges or paano ba?
yeah, it was very challenging to push it through many levels of the administration and, of
Admin as in
course,
UP admin
UP
or
admin.
Philippines?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, and but also many people were very excited because they think that AI now it's really time for these programs to come out. And we crafted it in a way that we bring out our own expertise.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, I was the one who handled the classical machine learning subject, so that's AI 221.
Mm-hmm.
There are also others who handle the advanced machine learning, which consists of the state of the art deep learning subject. We
Mm-hmm.
also have ML Ops machine learning operations. So that's related to deployment. Uh, Also, the more basic ones like introduction to AI and computational linear algebra. So all of these, we try to sequence them in a way that at the end, we are hoping to get students who are very well versed with AI, how to code, how to implement, and hoping to get more students into this program as well.
So maybe for the people who are curious about it, what are the main uh parang areas or skill sets that comprise the, I guess, the master's degree muna, no, and then the PhD degree for
So you mean
artificial
the outcomes,
intelligence? Yeah,
outcomes that
correct. Mga learning
mm,
outcomes, no?
I don't have the full list of the program outcomes, but at the top of my mind, of course, we're hoping that our students are able to code,
Code.
of course, implement machine learning. And the applications are not very strict. We can
Hmm.
go anywhere from maybe business to engineering to the sciences. Um, we have students from different walks of life, from finance, geologists, airlines. So very wide set of skill sets from these students, but all of them will have to know how to code and implement machine learning.
Okay. So in your experience, let's talk about your subject, no?
Okay.
What do you cover in in classical ML?
Right. So classical ML, when I say classical, I mean, I think this is the foundation that when people get first introduced to machine learning, what should they learn? Right?
Uh-uh.
So I divide the course into two. One is the supervised learning part, and then the unsupervised learning part. So
Mhm.
in the supervised learning part, we're discussing starting from linear regression, then on to kernel-rich regression, kernel methods, support vector machines, neural nets, random forest, XGBoost. So there are modules specific for these models. The way I teach it is starting from, of course, the philosophy of how they work, what's the math behind them. And I also derive the
Mm.
exact equations, for instance, from of support vector machines. So you need to know optimization theory, Lagrange multipliers, eigenvalues. So all of that in the first half. Then for unsupervised learning, I cover actually that's four main topics: dimensionality reduction, clustering, density estimation, and anomaly detection. Uh, some of them are interrelated, but I go through most of the popular methods like PCA, TSNE, autoencoders. For clustering, k-means, hierarchical clustering, DB-scan, density-based, GMMs, Gaussian mixture models. For density estimation, we have kernel density estimation,
KDE.
probability distributions, yeah.
Mm.
And for anomaly detection, a lot of methods as well. We can use KDE, we can use local outlier factor, one class SVM. So these classical techniques that are founded on theory and statistics and optimization and linear algebra. That's what I teach in my class. And at the end, we have a project where I group the students and I'll have them find a good data set, just a small one that can work in a laptop. You just apply the methods that you learned in the class and present them with a good storytelling and a good narrative. And so they have to imagine that the audience is their clients, but they're actually their classmates. So
Tama.
it's a nice environment.
Okay. Well, this is one thing I've always wanted to ask, no, and it's good to have an actual professor. Kasi coming from an industry practitioner standpoint,
Mm,
parang the functionality of most machine learning, at least in the classical sense, are usually classifiers, diba? And regressors. So, how do you explain the when a linear regression is more appropriate than a support vector regression? Parang ganun, no? Kasi minsan that's the first point of confusion na parang, hoy, parang pare-pareho siya. Apart from the interpretability, no? When
yeah,
would an SVR or SVC, support
yeah,
vector
yeah.
classifier, do better than, I don't know, decision tree siguro or logistic regression? Do you get that kind of question, or is that part of
Yeah,
the...
yeah, because first of all, I need to tell my students that if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
Mm-hmm.
right? So first they need to know all these methods and how they're different theoretically.
Mm.
But then when it comes to the real world, in practice, the data sets are noisy. You don't really know which ones work. So from a researcher point of view, you try everything,
Yeah.
right? So you try to do this, that, and then you have 5 to 6 models or 10 models being compare them to each other, validate them, and the one that works best for you will be used. And this
Mm.
is actually a hard thing to
To teach.
objectively
Uh,
decide,
uh,
right? Because when you say which model you should choose, some people say, okay, so we choose the one with most
mm.
accurate testing accuracy, right? But that's not really the end of the objective. Most in the from what I've heard, most people would just want to have a useful model. So it's usability, right?
Mm.
Can I use this? Can I trust this? Is it interpretable? Is it transparent? And sometimes those models are not actually the ones with the most accurate result.
Mm.
So you choose a linear regression over an SPM simply because you can interpret the weights. So things like this, it's different for every case study.
Right.
Yes, that's
Pro-
what I teach.
from a data standpoint, kasi minsan yan din ng ano eh. Like I remember when I was uh learning the various algorithms. I still remember the excitement of it. Eh. Parang wow, parang every lalo na when Python and R started to become popular, no, a couple of decades
Correct.
ago. Kasi before you had to use specialized tools to do it, no, like SPSS, ganyan. And
Okay.
then suddenly the open source revolution put all,
Scikit-learn, yeah.
oh, di ba, sklearn puts it in your hands. Pero yun na nga, parang the obsession is always on the algorithm. Only to find out later, at least in my case, mas malaki yung impact ng data, the quality of the data, the kinds of data. So do you encounter that kind of a eureka moment among your students, or is it still the usual where people
Yeah,
are
that, that's
obsessed with
the
algos first?
that's the reason why I start the course with supervised learning because
Mm.
most people are they're well-known models, neural nets. But when we go to unsupervised learning, which is not that familiar to some of the students based on my experience, that's the time when they realize that, yeah, it is important to understand your data first. That's the job of unsupervised learning. So, for instance, PCA, how to extract features that are more meaningful, um, how to remove outliers using anomaly detection methods, how to cluster or group similar data. So these things, they help you understand your data, your patterns first, before you do any prediction or analytics in your, or model predictions in your data set. So by the time they get to the second half of the course, which is unsupervised learning, that's when they realize that, okay, yeah, the data in the real world are noisy and we need a lot more techniques to understand what is happening.
Yeah, yung mga toy data sets are so spoiled, 'di ba? Parang
Right,
parang mataas ang accuracy yan all the time. And then when you encounter finally a real world data set, swerte ka na if you get a 70 or 60% R squared, no, it's mostly noise.
right.
So those kinds of questions, how do you field them? And then sige, before that, what's the normal split in a typical class between
Hmm.
people who are more into parang research or academia versus mga practitioner in an industry related field?
It's different, and actually you can tell them apart. I have students who are from the academy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I also teach a different subject called data science,
Mm-hmm.
397. In that subject, there are a lot of students who are themselves faculty members from other universities. So now they're more interested with how to teach all of these, right? So they take the course differently from people who are coming from the industry.
Mm-hmm.
They bring in their own data sets. They want to bring their own data sets in class, and then we talk about, okay, how we're gonna handle this. So it's interesting because by the time we get to the project presentation,
Yeah.
uh, when these people from industry bring in their data sets, everyone notices that, okay, this is a very messy data set, and we did a lot more of the unsupervised learning part before we can even begin with the neural net and so on. So people have different needs from the course, and we are hoping that we can cater to all of those needs.
Do you find no? I don't know if this is too much of a hypothetical, no? Is it easier to teach use cases to someone who understands the math versus teaching the math to someone who knows the parang the business side or the business problem, or pareho lang, ano, how do you
Right.
ano?
That's a good question because that's also the question I had when I designed the course.
Oo.
I have both of these students, people who are from industry and also people who knows the math.
Hmm.
So I try to do both worlds. I start the class with a motivation of our model for today.
Hmm.
Then I derive the math. And then after that, I bring in a toy data set first. So in this
To
toy
do the
data set,
model. Hmm.
yeah, so we train the model on that and try to see the effect of different hyperparameters. That gives more understanding about how the model works.
Yeah.
And then we bring in the practical use cases. So I bring in some data set that I have, especially coming from my field, which is chemical engineering. We do have data sets from the real world. I bring it to class, and then we talk about all the challenges that we needed to do before we even begin to train the real model, which is our lesson for that day. So it's important to know the difference between, okay, this is what we expect that should happen from a toy data set, but then when we go to the real data set, are we expecting the same behaviors like that? So that gives you more understanding and a more well-rounded understanding
Exposure.
about
Oo.
exposure of the students. Yeah.
I'm curious kasi it's been a while since although I did teach ano yan, machine learning once upon a time. Most of the academic work I'm involved in are mostly capstone eh. Parang capstone review, ganyan, capstone
Right.
paneling. So I'm curious how it's happening now when you want to teach mga concepts like I don't know, like overfitting, di ba? That's a
Okay. Yeah.
concept. Oo. How do students appreciate it? Kasi I find that that's something, if people are not formally trained, they don't actually care about that too much. No, and it's not
Okay.
something instinctual to them. At least dun sa nakita ko, no. In your case, how do you how do students react to yung mga ganyan, underfitting, overfitting, mga ganyan, no?
Uh, okay. So when I start the first day,
Mhm.
uh, so I don't teach that yet, right? So
Oh,
I
malayo pa
teach
yon. Oo.
yeah, introduction first. There will come to a point where I do need to start introducing to them this concept of the bias variance trade-off,
Trade-off.
which is
Tama.
yeah, overfitting and underfitting. So the example that I have in my class is uh, in the sciences we have, let's say, you have a data set that you know it represents growth. For instance, you're growing something, so you know that it monotonically increases, right? So I
Hmm.
have a data set where I have this is a part of let's say it's time series. It is a part of the data set. Then you train a model, and then when you train a model, you see that after the latest data point, instead of going up, it goes down.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know it's growth, but why is it forecasting the wrong direction, right? And then I show them that, okay, I'm going to tweak this, what we call regularization parameter. And suddenly there will be a value that will give me, okay, now this is what growth looks like.
Yeah.
So that problem will motivate, hopefully, the students to think about, so how do we now tune these hyper parameters?
Hmm.
And so now I present them this figure wherein complexity is on the x-axis. If your model is too complex, it will overfit. If your model is too simple, it will underfit.
Yeah.
So what we want is to tune our regularization parameter to get to the good fit, which is in the middle. And it's always hard to do that because in the real world, it's not clear cut.
Parang it's an
Uh,
art, no? In
it's
practice,
an
no?
art. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
It's not clear cut. So that's how I introduce it in my class, the bias variance trade-off.
lalo na curious about how the industry practitioners, actually it doesn't matter where they come from, pero the people who are not who don't have that instinct for over and underfitting, parang it'll bite them later when you're predicting na, di ba? If you're overfitted, the yung forward validation mo will never work kasi parang you
Yeah,
predicted the past. I learned that instinctually when I was still in financial markets. So one of the first parang
I
big data
see.
sets na
I see.
na-handle ko was financial forecasting, 'di ba? Mga
Right.
stock market trends. And alam mo na talaga, even if it's a simple moving average parameter, if it's highly tuned to the past, it will not work in the future. Parang weather. So,
Yeah.
but that only happens pag andyan na, no, in practice. Do your students pick that up naturally when you're going through your
Yeah,
lecture?
so that's the reason why I present as many examples as I can,
Yeah.
because in all of these examples, you can always have a model that overfits and underfits. So in the toy data set, in the toy example, they can see it.
Klarong
Uh,
klaro, klarong klaro. Oo.
yeah, yeah, very clearly, this is overfitting, this is underfitting. So
Mm.
now that you know this problem, how much more is it harder to find it in
Yeah.
the real world?
Yeah. Okay. Let's dig into some more. Just trying to recall ano pa ba mga topics. Feature engineering, no? How
Okay,
how
yeah,
how do
feature.
you tackle that in your class? And is it something people kind of again, it's closer to the data, no, not too much the algorithm. How do
Yeah.
people in your class appreciate the feature engineering parang discussions?
Right. So in the first half of the course, the first day is actually related to exploratory data analysis.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing that I teach. So it's basically more of just the code that we use. Okay, this is used for correlation, matrix visualization, scaling our data, and so on. Bar charts, viewing your data frames. And so I go on with the supervised learning part without feature engineering yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they need to understand the modeling first. Then when they go to the part where I start unsupervised learning, the first thing I teach is dimensionality reduction. And basically that's where I inject the notion of feature engineering.
Yeah.
Now we look at our features. And when you say dimensionality reduction, it branches into two. Either you do feature selection or feature extraction. In
Hmm.
fact, I just came from my class earlier. That's our lesson.
Yun yung lesson. Sige nga,
Yeah.
kasi I rarely hear these terms parang discussed openly sa labas, no? Pag
Okay, yeah.
sinabing dimensional reduction, the usual thing people think about, it's it like a principal components
Yeah, yeah.
analysis, which does both, di ba? So, when do you need feature extraction? Tama ba? And when do you need, what was the other one? Feature extraction
Feature selection.
and feature selection.
Yeah. So the first thing you do is, of course, to bring in your domain knowledge first.
Yeah.
So probably you know how the data set was generated. And based from some, let's say, physics or chemistry, or you know something about how the data was generated, then you now have an instinct of which features you think are important and which are not important.
Hmm.
So the first thing, of course, you just discard the ones that you don't need, and that's feature selection.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but under feature selection, there are a lot of methods as well. Like you have filter methods, wrapper methods, and embedded methods. And
Okay.
I teach them in class, and then we see statistically how to select the features from your data now without domain knowledge. If you don't have domain knowledge, then these are the methods that you can use. But the other thing, aside from selecting features means you're selecting a subset. It's a hard yes or no. I select this or not. But in feature extraction, you start with a high dimensional data set, and then you want a lower dimensional data set using some mapping. And this mapping, the most popular one that can do this is PCA, like you mentioned.
Right.
Yeah, but PCA is not the only method out there.
It's not a cure-all, no?
It's
Oh,
not a
actually,
cure
marami
all.
pa nga pala yun, ano? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I divide them into two. You have the linear and the nonlinear.
Hmm.
PCA is under the linear one. But in the nonlinear, you can have autoencoders.
Yeah. Yung
And you
latent
can have
space.
manifold learning algorithms.
Hmm.
You can have t-SNE, isomap, multidimensional scaling, LLE, all of these other methods.
I'm a big fan of MDS but I don't
MDS.
yeah, it's very well, number one, because it has a lot of applications sa social sciences, diba? Every time you have
Mm,
a survey, um, and it's got a good way of decomposing kunyari correlations into a map. Palaging ganyan eh. It's excellent for
mapping.
visualization din, di ba? You put
Yeah.
it on a 2D plane or minsan 3D plane, although it looks very looks very fancy, and then you do other things, no. So sige, let's step back a bit.
Okay.
Um what's the big takeaway from your class that you expect your students to get? Kasi ang daming methods eh. Too many to count, di ba? What's the big
Yeah.
one that you want them to walk away with?
Um, there are a few things, of course. So one is the one I've said earlier that if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
So you test as many algorithms or methods as you know.
Mhm.
Second of all is you don't rely purely on accuracy,
Yes.
right? Because you may have an accurate model, but maybe it's overfitting, or maybe that's not what's useful in
Mm.
your use case. Maybe it's interpretability. And of course, more and more experience. So it's not enough that we finish this class that you know all there is to know. Afterwards, you need to have a lot of experience in the real world data set. And that will hone you into a better data scientist.
Out of curiosity, kasi I remember when we were working on the master's degree sa UANP, the that's always the problem that we encountered. There's not enough practice data sets. Although nowadays ang dami online. But would really be nice to get ano, 'di ba? Parang actual from the field or from companies who usually are very anal about releasing data, syempre, privacy, confidentiality, blah blah blah. So is there a current parang protocol in UP on how to
Mm-hmm.
gather more data? Kasi the more data you have, the more case studies, 'di ba, that you can teach, no? And then it becomes more intuitive to the student. How are you guys bridging that gap, no? If ever there is a gap.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to answer because really data collection is an expensive thing.
Hmm.
You need a lot of funding. And in fact, most people say that when you have a project in AI, okay, so you need funding for the computing power.
Yeah.
But actually, you need funding for data collection as well.
Hmm.
It's a tedious process as well. It's not that easy. In fact, the only reason why we have computer vision today is because of the group in Stanford under Fei-Fei Li, who
Yeah, the
painstakingly
ImageNet, tama ba? ImageNet.
labeled, ImageNet Challenge, who painstakingly labeled millions of images, and that really took a lot of resources.
Na apparently may mga mali din pala. I read that somewhere. Na may mga
Right, right.
mislabeled ano. But that's part of real
Mislabeled.
world data, I guess, 'di ba?
Yeah. So, and imagine most of the AI we now have today was built on that.
On that
So
corpus
the
or that data
mistakes
set.
from
Hmm.
that data set will carry on. So
Yeah.
really, it's a hard thing. It's a very painful thing. But luckily, there are already openly available in the internet data sets. And in fact, in some cases, in my class, because I also worked with some of the data from the engineering, for instance, in manufacturing, chemical plants, I bring them to class. So we have data sets, for instance, of an entire chemical plant of 50 variables, a 50 time series, sampled one sample per second, and we have 10,000 samples. So it's a lot of data that maybe you can play around and have anything you want. So I try to bring it in class and also bring in my papers as well. So I do research. We have data from our research, and if it is published, then I can show the data to my class, and we can use them as use cases as well.
Okay yan, no? Kasi yun talaga eh. If you have more data, like ako, the majority of my parang background in ML came from my finance era. Kasi ang daming
Finance.
types of data. You have loans, deposits, di ba? You have balance sheet, you have financial markets. So they're not equal. Kumbaga, some data are more valuable than others, but you can at least
Mm.
see the different approaches. Tapos may marketing, may finance, may operations. Banking pala, may banking era. So wait, sige,
Mm.
back to the program, no? So, um, thinking out loud, the I guess the culture, no? I'm curious about what kinds of cultural change do you witness with your students? Kasi nga, unless most of them already come from sort of an analytical and quantitative background, but do you also get students who come from a completely left field na hindi
Uh,
talaga quantitative or hindi talaga ano?
that we're going to have a hard time to accept them because actually our program requires some knowledge of linear algebra,
Right.
basic programming, optimization. And so we assume that our students are already well versed with these numerical methods and very quantitative uh,
Mm.
things.
Mm.
But uh, but of course, AI right now is not just quantitative. It injects everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're hoping to involve a lot more other people here. Hopefully, when we have, for instance, a subject pertaining to the ethics of AI, and hopefully we'll have people coming from philosophy, mass communication, even music, social sciences, all of these coming together to uh, try to start the conversation at least, right? That because now AI is everywhere. How do we deal with it as a humanity,
Mm, tama.
right? So how do we move forward? And everyone has to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, yun nga eh. Parang, if you remember, I made that point dun sa ITDC
Mm-hmm.
where I said lalo na academia, we have our silos, diba? So the social sciences don't talk to STEM. And to the extent that that's probably because of it's environmental. I mean, these departments don't sit beside each other, much less
Mm-hmm.
find common time, no? But do you see something like that contributing to this parang I don't know how to call it. Parang relative slowness in terms of the pickup of the ethics of data and AI. Kasi I also believe the ethics conversations outside are largely dominated by non-STEM. And then
Yeah,
it's the STEM people who don't actually weigh in. They say it's beyond us, no? So in your case, how do you feel about that, or what's your thought about the ethics of it?
right. I think we're moving in the right direction because, for instance, in the top conferences in machine learning and AI,
Hmm.
before I think 2016, there was not many papers around the ethics and the safety of AI, but there were people who started this movement and from the quantitative side.
Hmm.
And now they're trying to figure out how to inject all of these what we call human values, okay, whatever they are,
Sama bigla, oo.
into the learning of this AI and chatbots. Because ultimately we're going to interact with these.
Hmm. Tama.
So this is something called the alignment problem. And in 2016, top conferences are now bringing in more workshops, more papers on how to deal with this alignment problem.
Hmm.
And in fact, I can show you a book that I
Sige
have.
nga. Yeah, yeah, you mentioned this to me na highly
Right.
recommended.
I just finished reading this.
Oo.
The alignment problem, Brian
Brian
Christian.
Christian. Oo.
Yes, machine learning and human values. So we've already done some efforts. The book shows that we're moving in the right direction, but of course, there's still a lot to do.
Right.
Right? So, for instance, when you want to make a chatbot that is morally right, the question is who has the authority to put the right morals to these AI systems? Even as humans, we argue with each other about what is fair, what exactly is just, what exactly is being right.
Right.
A
Oo.
very difficult thing. So we need to start all of these conversations.
Well, to show a parallel structure, kunyari yung mga non-profit or NGOs, like the Rotary Club is one of the oldest, no?
Yeah.
They have that four-way test, which is basically an ethics guideline, diba?
Mm-hmm.
No? And the way they sustain it is because there's a global organization funding it. Parang ganun ang dating. And then people who join these Rotary clubs, I don't think, I'm just generalizing. The first
Mm-hmm.
thing in their head is the ethics of it. Maybe more of the social good rather than the ethics. I want to serve or I want to give back to society. I already made my my business. So now I can give back. Pero lumalabas, really what differentiates, you know, apart from profit, which is one measure, yung ethics. Kasi some companies talaga are doing downright unethical stuff. And then we go into the lab, you know. I remember having a conversation with a colleague din dati sa banking and
Okay.
PhD in math also. So sa kanya pinagagawa yung mga yan, yung mga math models for risk management. And
Okay.
kasi risk is also kind of close to ethics, but it's not exactly it. Kunyari at that time we were talking about defaults, credit
Okay.
risk. And parang may lumabas na finding kasi parang ang just let me know what you think of this situation. Parang the objective was to do profit based modeling, no? So it's not necessarily just minimizing losses, but it's maximizing
Okay.
returns. And lumalabas after getting all of the data, um parang some weird stuff started to come out. Like parang barbers should be extended more credit kasi they're more parang hindi
Okay.
ma-explain parang from the default parang from the default
This is from the model.
from the model. Kasi the objective is to minimize losses, no? Pero pag sinabi maximize returns, iba yung lumalabas. So of
Mm.
course, it's up to the user, no, to interpret and come up with rationale kasi you have to explain it to your management committee or your board. Pero back to you, in your classroom where more
Okay.
foundational discussions are being had.
Right.
What kind of guidance do you give, no, mga in those cases, no? Where
That's a good question.
medyo ambiguous minsan, 'di ba? So,
Right. Well, mostly my class is quantitative.
yeah.
So can't do anything about it. But actually, my last lecture in the class is all about explainability,
Yes.
explainable AI.
Mm.
And I think it's one of those things that will help us uh, make AI more transparent
Yeah.
and, of course, more trustworthy. And there, well, I still teach quantitatively. So I teach the methods that are available to us right now and how to make machine learning models explainable.
Mm.
So there's things like, for instance, in tree-based models and decision trees, you have feature importances, mean decrease in Gini impurity. You can also use SHAP or Shapley values, which are uh, coming from game theory, cooperative game theory. And you use that to, again, rank your features as to which feature is most important, most significant. Now, I can tell you something about explainability. Why does explainability leads to feature importance?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can tell you an example. For instance, if you're a student and your teacher gave you a grade, okay? So let's say 70. So you think of that teacher as the AI. It gives you a grade, a
Okay.
score,
Okay.
but it's not explainable. What do you want to make it explainable? Okay, I want a breakdown. So the
Of the
student will come to the
70.
teacher,
Oo.
right? Why is my grade 70? So you have a breakdown of all of these input features. Okay, your test scores, your exercises, your attendance, and so on. 50% of this, 20% of that, and so on. And that's the same philosophy that we have when we want to make our AI explainable. It gives you a prediction, so let's say a forecast, then you want the AI to explain why. So you go back to your input features and say, oh, it's because it's 50% of this, 20% of
Mm.
that.
Mm.
And that's what I teach in the last lecture, how to make these feature importances.
Yeah, a big chunk of it is also the validation process, diba, for the model or the testing phase. And that's the underfitting, overfitting conversation also.
Yeah, yeah.
Pero when people ask, how do you defend that? Kasi ang daming there's really a cultural divide between working in an office versus working in a lab. And sabi ko nga, to use parang extremes, no? In a lab, you need your results to be significant, irrespective of the effects. So p-values are important. Sa business, kahit random yan, basta kumita. So the profit is I mean, really talaga ganun.
Yeah, yeah, realistically.
Oh, on the sometimes it makes sense now, okay, it's significant, pero they don't even care. kung significant or not. It really just not is not in the conversation. So the onus is left to you as the AI practitioner, AI engineer, data scientist in that office. Kumbaga integrity mo na lang. Oh, I'm gonna put a p-value of 30% out there. Parang it just parang you know it's a bad idea kasi at some point with such a result, you'll know that the results won't be replicable in the future. Iba yung pattern na makikita mo. Pero ang hirap i-explain nun to a manager or a or a vice president, no. So, do you have whether it's an exact subject or not,
Mhm.
parang where do you cover parang the need for communication in a student, no? Do you have something like
Mhm.
that? Like how
Yeah,
do you
so these are
communicate
important
results?
soft skills,
Oh.
right? So in my class, I can't speak for the other classes, but of course, in my class, I try to inject that during the project presentation. So
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
really have to make a good case, communicate the problem effectively, and answer why you use certain models. And it's not enough that you make a good prediction. You also have to make it explainable. And so now, how do you uh, change things, change the way you do things now that
Mm.
you know what the ML predicts, right? So this pertains to from descriptive analytics to predictive analytics to prescriptive analytics, which should be the goal. But of course, it's a very hard thing to do because, of course, there will be resistance. Okay, my machine learning model predicted this, so therefore we need to cut our employees.
Actually,
So
'di ba? Oo.
there is resistance. Yeah, there is resistance. So, well, at least you as a data scientist, you did your job in explaining this is the output of the machine learning model.
Yeah, and of course, I don't know if this is something that you guys even cover, but data related, lalo AI ngayon, jobs tend to be highly political. Kasi nga you're
I see.
managing information eh. And the information you produce may run contrary to
Mm,
initial assumptions, no? Then
yeah.
when you quantify it, ay, iba pala dapat yung priority, ito pala. But then people have already made their parang tumaya na
Yes.
yung management. No, it's gotta be this way. So anyway, sige. I don't even know. Do you get to discuss that at all in your class?
Well, because this is a very specific case already,
Mm,
we tend not to discuss that anymore because also there's some sensitivity to the issue, right?
right. Right.
What are the resistances to your ML prediction, your
Mm,
decisions? So we didn't have time for that as well. So just focus on the quantitative.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Okay.
a good thing to talk about. There should be a subject for that. Right?
Yeah, yeah. just geeking out a bit. What's your favorite machine learning method in your class, no? What do you really like?
Um, I tell this to my students. My favorite machine learning model is Gaussian processes.
Mm-hmm.
And one, it's a kernel method, and I like kernels. And second of all, Gaussian process can give you not just a point prediction, but also an uncertainty prediction.
Okay. Okay.
So it's not enough that you predict a forecast, right? Which is a single value. You want to know whether the AI was sure about your forecast.
Tama.
If if it's sure, the uncertainty is small. It's not sure, you'll see that the distribution of the prediction is large. So can neural nets do that? Can SVMs do that? It will be most naturally done by the Gaussian process. And it's based on Bayesian inference.
Tama.
That's why it's
With
one of my
priors.
favorites.
Mm.
Yes, it's one of my favorites machine learning model.
Just as a maybe as a person who teaches parang data or machine learning, how do
Mhm.
you see the appreciation of AI sa labas, no? Is it something that you approve of, especially with the dawn of the Gen AI, parang ano, large language
Right.
models? Because I feel that there's an undercurrent in there. It's being accessed at the level that goes beyond any classical method we've done before. Kasi usually, very purposive ka. I'm gonna do a regression because I have this experiment. Pero for
Mhm.
the longest part, it's not something that people really will do on a day-to-day basis outside their work.
Of course, yeah, of course, yeah.
Oo. So parang ganun. How do you address that in that case?
So you're asking about awareness
Hmm.
of
Kasi ngayon Gen
Definitely,
AI na eh. So I'm
yeah,
sure there
yeah.
will be a subtle difference between, kind of the canon that we teach in classrooms and what's
Right,
outside.
right. Yeah, actually, the subject that I teach is the first part of machine learning. The second part will be advanced machine learning,
The next
and
class yun.
it's
Oh.
yeah, it's handled by a different faculty member, and so that's where they teach all of these Gen AI. All you need more compute,
Mm-mm.
and but then again, it's a different thing to talk about the issues surrounding Gen AI.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And right now, I think we don't really have an explicit subject on that because, again, this is conversations with people outside of the quantitative world, right? So you need to be able to bring in all these other people from social sciences and so on and law. Uh, so I envision that we must have a subject like that,
Yeah.
a subject wherein we have students from all walks of life. Really, they will one way or another they will interact with these AI chatbots and so on, and we need to start the conversations going.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I'll dive into another parang often hindi naman ignored pero
Mhm.
discussed point. So there's the knowledge of modeling. Ito yung kwento mo kanina, programming. What about domain knowledge or knowledge in a particular field? How important do you think it is, to be an effective data science or AI practitioner?
Yeah, the thing that I read in social media right now is domain knowledge is king,
Is king.
right?
Mm.
Yeah, because at the very start of your pipeline, yeah, you already need to bring in your domain knowledge on how to tackle your problem with respect to your objective. For instance, in feature selection pa lang, right? You need to bring in your domain knowledge. And in fact, in my area, which is in chemical engineering, we have this notion of is the ML predicting or is the ML agreeing with what we know in physics and chemistry?
Right.
Okay, right? That was the case actually at first, but
Mm-hmm.
right now we're now using ML to further the sciences because AI has now gave us a lot of tools that we can use for accelerating discoveries in physical laws, chemical properties of molecules, and so on. So now AI is the one bringing advantages to the chemistry and physics rather than trying the chemistry and physics to go into the
Into
ML.
ML. Okay.
So it works both ways. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to say.
Di ba there is a field, medyo lumana, called analytical chem or analytical chemistry. Uh, that seems to fuse statistics or at least yung mga ganyan with traditional chem. Um, is that merger, commonplace? Parang siguro, baka wrong analogy rin to. Parang yung psychology, you add a little data science pepper, you now have psychometrics. Parang ganun. And they
I see, I
license
see.
those people, the ones who do surveys and, psychological assessments. Kasi they have to use statistical models, no, to assess people vis-a-vis a population. So do you see more of that thing happening where you have a raw discipline like chem, physics, STEM, no, biology, parang bio, no? There's bioinformatics. Parang ganun eh. There's this
Mhm.
parang hybrid field palagi that needs to happen with the intersection of itong mga tinuturo mo and that
Yeah,
domain thing.
that's a very exciting set of fields actually. I'm very excited with those to come up more.
Mm.
Right now we have computational chemistry,
Mm.
computational biology, systems biology, systems chemistry. They use these techniques, computational techniques, the computer, to further discoveries in these fields. And also in my case, we use that a lot in what we call process data analytics,
Process data
which
analytics.
is yeah. So it's a something. It's a I could say it's a field wherein you have process engineering, you have a process data. It could be chemical plants, but it can also be very small things, small systems like atomic scale. and you bring in the data analytics to process the data from experiments. And maybe you can learn something more than just simply using, let's say, response surface methodology, which is one of the one of the tools that people previously used. But right now, we replace that with neural nets. We replace this with SVM. So right now, it's a budding field, and it injects many fields. Actually, it's not just in STEM. For
Yeah.
instance, we now have digital humanities,
Yeah. That was very
right?
nice to see. No.
Yeah, digital humanities, and I think there are professors in UP as well who are now doing research in digital humanities, which I
Mhm.
think is a very important field.
Yeah. I'm just conscious we're nearly at the hour. It's so quick,
Okay,
no? Diba?
right,
Ang bilis, no?
right.
Um, can you give us a bit of and we rarely talked about AI, no? So maybe a little bit about AI. Where do you see this trend going, and how is academia adapting to it? No. Now the trend can be both the use of AI within the academic setting and the act of teaching AI. And again, it's a very broad field pa, no? And there's still a general parang lack of agreement na okay, these are the core skills, essential skills. Parang nangyayari everyone wants to study everything. And
Everything, right?
parang unicorn ng dating. I mean, good luck if you can. Why not, 'di ba? Pero for many people who are working, hindi nila kaya yun. So ikaw, ano mga forecasts more or what are you excited about in the near term, no, when it comes to AI
Yeah.
driven stuff?
So right now internationally, people are hungry about more compute, right? Bigger models, bigger computing power, NVIDIA accelerating GPUs and so on.
Hmm.
So of course, we see that coming, and AI will become more and more powerful, more and more sophisticated. But of course, only for specific tasks.
Yeah.
AGI or general artificial general intelligence, maybe for me, still a long way.
Mhm.
But for specific tasks, papers have revealed that AI is now better than humans, right, in computer vision and so on. So we'll see a lot more of this happening. Now, for the academic setting, I think the basic uh, concepts that turns up in classical machine learning, like loss functions, gradient descent, regularization, bias variance trade-off, this will stay. I think all of these will stay. And I think these are also the core concepts that when you begin your ML journey, you need to start with these concepts because later on, that will be the same thing that powers ChatGPT. Like when I say in class, okay, we're going to discuss dimensionality reduction. Actually, this thing is the beginning of ChatGPT architecture, wherein you have positional embedding and you have embedding of words,
And it's
right?
consistent.
So,
No.
so somehow it's the concept of dimensionality reduction. You have 12,000 vector words. So these core concepts will stay. And I'm very glad that I have a lot of students now who are now aware of these basic concepts. And hopefully we'll have more students and they will go on in their own academic universities and then teach more and more students under them. And hopefully the entire country will now have all of these basic knowledge and also not just the quantitative world. I think these basic concepts should also be known by people from the social sciences and so on,
Yeah.
and law, yeah, because they will be interacting with AI and
In the course of their
in,
jobs, diba? They're
in
gonna
the course of
encounter
their
it.
jobs. Yes. So if they want to question the AI in some point, maybe they can pinpoint, okay, it's because of this part of the architecture, right? So it's a nice thing to have. And I'm glad that I'm doing my part in this as a cog in this part.
Okay. Sige. So, any para call outs pala for people who might be interested in your programs? You can feel free to share it now, no, if you want to.
Yeah, so we're accepting for the first semester. That's gonna start in August or September, I think. New AI, Masters of Engineering in AI students, PhD in AI students. So this is the call is open every semester. So
Mm-hmm.
there's an intake in August and September, but there's also an intake in the second semester. And usually we take around 20 to 30 students. But don't worry if you're not accepted now. You just try, and you will eventually be selected. And we're hoping that these students of ours will go on to their fields and spread
Yeah.
this knowledge on AI.
Okay. So yeah, I guess with that, that's a good enough place to end it for now. I want to thank Prof. Carl Pilario, Biten, as we expected.
Yeah, it's a lot to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you for lending us your time. No, I hope we can invite you again. And let's maybe we should geek out now on some use cases. Baka yun talaga dapat ang pinag-uusapan.
Yeah, yeah. Go deep. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 'di ba? So thank you very much, Prof. Carl, for attending.
Thank you for the invitation, Doc, and hope to see you again.